Hello, researchers. My name is Julia Maxwell, and I am the Social Sciences Librarian at Rutgers University in New Brunswick. So today we're going to be talking about systematic and scoping reviews as part of our bite-sized learning on evidence synthesis methods. This video was prepared by myself and evidence synthesis graduate specialist Jayati Bist. So thank you to Jayati for creating the script and the slides for this video. So it's very common to not know what the differences are between different types of reviews. You might have heard of things like systematic reviews, scoping reviews, literature reviews, or meta-analysis. And if you're feeling confused about what type of review is right for your project, you're not alone. I get questions all the time from everyone from novice researchers all the way to very experienced researchers about what is the difference between a systematic review and a scoping review. So today we're going to learn about the difference between systematic reviews and scoping reviews. They are both types of literature reviews used in research that use transparent, standardized, and systematized methods to collect, locate, filter, and synthesize all available quality evidence. But they serve different purposes and have distinct methodologies. I will note that systematic and scoping reviews are both completed using transparency, reproducibility, and methodological rigor. As opposed to a traditional literature review, you are very clear about what search strategies you use, what databases you search, and the process of collecting the literature that you then try to assess for inclusion in your review. That does not differ based on either systematic or scoping review. But a systematic review has usually a stricter research question, often has to do with an intervention. It's comprehensive and unbiased, as is a scoping review, but it usually is more about applications to existing research that might inform practice or policy. Scoping reviews, on the other hand, are often used to map existing literature on a broader topic. They are quite literally used to scope the existing literature. They're often used to identify gaps, clarify concepts or definitions, and provide overviews of the available evidence, sometimes in order to further a research trajectory or as preparation for, you guessed it, a systematic review. Systematic reviews are conducted to answer a specific research question by synthesizing the available evidence from primary studies. This focus is on providing a comprehensive and unbiased summary of existing research. It'll have a very well-defined research question or set of questions that'll guide the review process. These questions are very specific and often based on a framework like PICO or PCC. The goal is to answer these questions systematically. Scoping reviews, on the other hand, also begin with a research question, but it's often much broader. And the goal is to kind of explore the extent, range, and nature of this literature that addresses the research question. Here are some examples of questions that you might come across, or formats of questions you might come across if you're doing a scoping review versus a systematic review. For a scoping review, we might ask something like, how is outcome X defined in the literature on Y population? What is known about how outcome X is assessed in setting Y? Or what measurements are used to assess phenomena Y? Systematic reviews ask more specific questions. How effective is intervention X in Y population? What is the outcome of intervention X in population Y in comparison with population Z? What is the outcome of intervention X in specific context Y? So you can see that although they're both formulated research questions, some of them in the systematic review category are much more specific and getting at kind of a much more granular area of research. For study selection, a systematic review often has criteria that are defined very specifically based on the research question. These are to ensure the selected studies are directly relevant to the research question. Scoping reviews also use inclusion and exclusion criteria, but as you can imagine, because the research question is broader, these criteria are often broader. This allows for a wider range of study types, gray literature, etc. I will note that in both cases, systematic and scoping, eligibility criteria are rigorously applied and documented. You can hear more about systematic and scoping review criteria and inclusion and exclusion on our workshops, which are linked at the end of this video. There are reporting standards for both systematic and scoping reviews that need to be followed in order to have that methodological rigor. These are created by PRISMA, the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Systematic reviews obviously follow the regular PRISMA, whereas scoping reviews follow PRISMA SCR, which is the extension for scoping reviews. Now, these are sort of like a checklist that you can kind of tick off to make sure that your review has followed the standards set for proper evidence synthesis. Now, let's look at some examples. First, I have a systematic review. The effectiveness of mental health courts in reducing recidivism and police contact. You can see here right away they use PRISMA, they define it. And what we'll see next are eligibility criteria, right? So we see very clear eligibility criteria and uneligibility criteria, along with very clear purpose and a justification. This is very specific. Mental health courts, reducing recidivism and police contact. And we're talking about effectiveness of that intervention. Now let's look at a scoping review. Intergenerational cycles of maltreatment, a scoping review of psychosocial risk and protective factors. Again, we see that introduction and justification, but we move towards inclusion and exclusion criteria are much more broad. For example, types of maltreatment are very broad. There's several different types. We also see intergenerational maltreatment and different study types, dissertations and theses, studies, conference proceedings. But again, we see it's very well documented in both cases. So those are our two examples. Hopefully that helped illustrate some of the concepts that we were talking about today, especially the difference in specificity between the two review types. And that's all we have for you today. If you would like more information on systematic and scoping review education here at Rutgers University Libraries in the social sciences, you can check out our YouTube workshops or our live workshops, which are linked in the LibGuide. The LibGuide has step-by-step information for both of these review types, along with a wealth of other information. And you can also reach out to us. You can reach out to me via email, or you can book an appointment to talk about your review project and get support.